Thanks very much, guys. I'd now like to introduce Sven Bornemann, who is going to tackle the topic Rethinking Data Privacy. Sven is a member of the IAB Europe Policy Committee. He is standing in today for our CEO, Townsend Fian, who unfortunately was ill. So I'm really grateful to Sven for stepping in. He's been participating in privacy discussions in Europe for a long time, both in his capacity as a member of this committee and also in his capacity as CEO of AGOF in Germany. Thank you, Sven.
Thank you, Alison. Hello, everyone. So right before lunch, a few remarks on this topic, which is a bit dry, but I think it's worth mentioning. We've heard a little bit about data privacy and the ongoing activities in Europe, and I think this is an important thing, are not only important and critical for companies operating out of Europe for European clients, but also for, let's say, US or other international corporations servicing clients in the EU. So let's have a look. Okay, so here we go. So first of all, this whole thing is, well, kind of brand new. So the idea of this data protection regulation that's supposed to come in May next, that's supposed to get in place in May next year, May 2018, is supposed to be, when the discussions have been started a while ago, a renovation or modernization of the data protection regulations that we have in place in Europe since 1995. So that's kind of early days for the online business in Europe. So we thought it's time, and it's a good thing to discuss things. The impression we have right now, with a couple of things that have already been released and a couple of things that are still under discussion, is that it's not necessarily only a bit of a modernization, but there'll obviously a couple of things to come which will be really difficult for the online business in Europe, and as I said, also for other operations not out of Europe, but who are servicing clients in the EU. So what does that mean? First of all, within this new regulations, we'll have a much broader definition of what personal data is. So that has been something that we could get along in Europe with quite well over the last couple of years, but this definition of personal data will be much broader. On the other hand, we'll have kind of a narrow legal basis for operating with this data. So that's kind of a conflict. On the other hand, on the one hand, we'll have user interest, so that the industry takes care of the user data. On the other hand, there'll be legitimate interest of the industry, and this balance will be, as far as we see right now, will be pretty difficult to handle. And I mean, this is for the industry, not only in Europe, as I said, it's tough because there'll be fines. There are fines in place right now already, but these are kind of, well, really, really tame. But the times that are discussed right now for breaches of the law are going up to 4% of annual global turnovers of the company was breaching the law. So 4% of global turnover. I think that's something to think about. Anyway, from the IAB standpoint, we think that there are a couple of things that have to be rethought. The question is what will happen until May next year. Not too much, we're afraid, but nevertheless, we think that privacy, on the one hand, data protection, are, at the end of the day, two different aspects, and we're not really sure why the legislation in Brussels is trying to combine all this in these new rules that are supposed to be launched. So that's one thing, and another thing that's in the media and which you might have read about is this phrase cookie provision. But when it comes to accessing user devices and reading, and getting information about user behavior, it'll not only be about reading cookies, it'll be about reading all types of identifiers that could be used to identify users and to get some insights about their behavior. So cookie is just one idea. Device fingerprints, all other types of identifiers will be touched and will be regulated. So the impact will be huge on this. That's something we're really concerned about in our meetings. Nevertheless, where there's law, where there will be laws, there will be some kind of lawful use. And above everything, user consent is, the underlying concept of these regulations that are taking place now, or will take place. That means the user has to agree, has to opt in certain cases, double opt-in for each and every cookie to a certain extent, which is kind of critical and causes a lot of discussions and questions. And there's another aspect called technical necessity. What does that mean? So technical necessity, for example, for transmission of communication, IP telephones, these kind of things. Also, for example, for the provision of a service a user is requesting. For example, a shopping cart, but only if the user is requesting it. That's the thing. And we have this aspect here, which you see in red, because we're not so clear about it right now. It's still a bit unclear. Is web audience measurement. So measurement of web audiences, not to deliver ads or target advertising, but to, measure how many people are accessing a platform or a website or a page in a certain amount of time, which is more the approach. So that doesn't sound very pleasant, and it's not only the IAB Europe, it's various other organizations in Europe, including ourselves, the AGOF in Germany, who are approaching these, who are traveling to Brussels these days to talk to the people there, because I think it's time really to stand up and to talk about things and to let the people who are responsible for all these adaptations know what kind of consequences their activities will have. So, because what we see now, also after the first discussions we had, is that the exceptions are kind of narrow, and that even now, after the first discussions, quite a few people in Brussels think that are criticizing exceptions because they think these exceptions are still too broad. So the next something like 9 months or so will be pretty difficult and pretty interesting to see what the politicians in Brussels will make out of it. And at the end of the day, it's us who have to, as I said, contact the people and make our voices heard, so that we should take the opportunity to make sure that the people in Brussels, the politicians there, at least understand what will happen once all these regulations will be in place. So, if you're thinking about participating in this journey to Brussels, either do it on your own or contact the IAB Europe or your local IAB people. They're definitely ready to help. I have some contact details here, which is Townsend Fien, the CEO of the IAB Europe, and Matthias, a colleague. They're happy to get your emails, and so that we should try to, at least make something about these regulations that are supposed to come up.
Thanks, Sven.
Thank you.
So we have time for a couple of questions. Does anybody in the audience have a question to kick off with? I know it's a rather humbling topic to have before we go into lunch. There we go. Thank you.
Hi. My question is regarding e-privacy. We talk a lot about people-based, but if privacy is engaged, all the people-based solution will be not allowed.
So could you say that again? I didn't get the point really.
My question is, if e-privacy will be online, what about the people-based solution? That means the profiling between desktop cookie and in-app mobile application.
So yeah, the privacy regulation will definitely cover all these aspects. But well, as I said, the details are still kind of on their way, and we are currently, well, taking all the opportunities we can get hold of to talk to the people in Brussels to make sure that it's going in, well, somehow right direction.
I think that one of the key points is that the GDPR regulation has been reviewed. People know they have to comply by next year, but actually how to comply and what the implications are still very much up for discussion. That's why we're trying to bring people together into a broad GDPR implementation group to make sure they are fully aware of that. In terms of the e-privacy review, that is looking as if it might have even stricter implications, just to emphasize what Sven said, than the GDPR review. So it's really important that people do get involved in this right now and help to support that dialogue that's going on in Brussels. Are there any further questions? I see. So we've given everybody a gloomy story, Sven, for them to take away into lunch. So
okay.
it's very important people engage both in a local, at a local level and at a European level. And please do join with us on that journey, okay? So thanks very much. We'll leave everybody to go through for lunch now and look forward to this afternoon's programme. Thank you, Sven.
Okay, thank you, guys.